Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus and the marketplace. I'm your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify. Every week, we bring on authors, speakers, coaches, CEOs, leaders, and nonprofits who are also passionate about putting God back in business. And it's no different this week. I'm really excited for our guest. Today, we've got Addison Williams. He's a bridge builder, superconnector. He's full time with Faith Driven Entrepreneur. He's also a partner in a college baseball recruiting company and host of two, not one, two podcasts focused on restoration through redemptive real estate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life, Addison Williams. Addison, what's going on, man?
Jason, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Addison, we're looking at your bio. Anytime I see somebody in multiple activities, multiple things, different assignments and callings from the Lord, we know you just didn't wake up in 2026 and boom, here you are. You're just spreading your gifts and talents across many areas. So, kind of take us on the professional journey of where you're at today in 2026.
Absolutely, Jason. I'd be happy to. And quite frankly, it starts with a God moment. Way back when my mom and dad were faithful, taking me to church and just treating me like I was built with intention and being excellent in everything I did. And so that for me transferred into baseball. That was really the catalyst for me going through school. I love baseball. I actually played college baseball. That's a little bit about my journey we can dive into in a little bit. But I grew up understanding what faith was, but I would say that it was more so, I like to say, religion over relationship. And that's a bigger part of my story. But just navigating that, I really had to find myself. And so, whenever I was in college, I thought that I had aspirations following in one of my brother's footsteps, actually, to go into federal law enforcement.
Mm.
And whenever I was in college, I was actually playing college baseball at the time, and I was looking to go into a co op program that the U.S. Marshal Service provided. When I was a senior, I had one more year of spring baseball remaining. And so I thought that that was my in. I was going to go through the co op program, get the internship, and really just be a shoe in. But about that time, the government went on a hiring freeze because nobody was retiring. And then also, they actually cut the co op program. So I wasn't able to do what I anticipated I was looking to do. So it was in that moment, I really just wrestled a lot with, hey, what is my identity? And about that time, I lost it because I had put all of my identity, 95% of it, in baseball. And so
Mm.
nobody ever talks about it. But that moment when you hang up your cleats for the last time, there's a lot of pressure that you've been holding on to that I really didn't have an outlet for. And so that just really took me on this journey of, hey, what do I do?
Mm.
Fast forward to my professional career. I coached college baseball for about 3 years. And this was the first God wink that we were laughing about on the front end of this recording, is that in 2017, I'd always held faith very close to me. And then I'd also held business and entrepreneurship very close to me as well. And I hadn't read Halftime by Bob Buford yet.
Mm.
However, his tagline is from success to significance. So in 2017, I was in a tough spot mentally and really needed a way for me to do something different. And it was the God wink that said, hey, I want to make my faith and work meaningful. I want to do those things together. And that's actually what spearheaded where I am now, which is full time with Faith Driven Entrepreneur. But then in 2017, my first entry point into the faith and work world was with Right Now Media, working with churches,
Mm.
nonprofits, and faith driven business leaders that were all along this faith and work movement of work is worship, faith and work, be intentional about that. And that just fired me up. And so for the past 9 years, I found myself in the faith and work world full time. I've worked for three different nonprofits. Faith Driven Entrepreneur, or Faith Driven Movements, is the umbrella organization, but it's all driven by what I love to be at the intersection of, and that's connecting our faith and work and really coming alongside faith-driven business leaders, organizations, and churches that really want to fuel this faith and work movement.
Mm. Addison, there's so many powerful things in what you shared. One, I've got an important baseball question for you. Better hitting stance, Gary Sheffield or Ken Griffey Jr.?
Oh man. Whenever I think of Ken Griffey, I just got to think of the knee touching the ground, man. The big swing. The most important thing, if we're talking scriptural, right, we can bring it back to faith real quick. They both
Hmm.
have great swings, but that at the end of the day, there's a reason they're in the big leagues, right? They were intentional, and it all comes down to this hand-eye coordination.
Mm,
If you have great hand-eye coordination and your body is relaxed, it doesn't matter how crazy your swing is, you're going to make contact.
mm. I love it. See, folks, what you didn't know is that you were going to get a mini sermonette that integrated sports as
That's
with your
it.
faith. That's like a whole other convo. That's like a
That's
3 hour
a
conversation on its own. But
I'm
that
here
does
for
bring
it.
up another good point, Addison. You talked about alongside your journey, and having been a former college football player myself, you talked about identity. What is it about, like, as awesome as athletics are, we have unlimited takeaways and sermons that we can, when you think about Fellowship of Christian Athletes and all the different, if you had a chaplain, um,
Yeah.
but what is it about the sports environment that causes so many of us to get so wrapped up in the sport that when it leaves, it's like, holy cow, who am
Mm.
I and what do I do? And so, what wisdom would you give to athletes that maybe they're about to transition out, or maybe like you and me, that you've been out for a little bit and you're in the business world now and you're just trying to navigate, like, man, I felt like maybe 5, 10 years ago, I knew where things are going and I'm still struggling years later.
Yeah.
What wisdom would you give?
This is where that 3 hour soapbox comes in, Jason, but I'll keep it short. You mentioned that I host two podcasts.
Hmm.
I want to clarify one quick thing. Redemptive real estate is something that I'm very much looking forward to later this year. So we can talk about that in just a moment. But two of the podcasts I host are very intentional about people sharing their stories. But most specifically, one of the podcasts I host is Fungos and Footnotes. So, for those that don't know baseball terms, a fungo is what the coach uses for in and out. A footnote is oftentimes in a book that everybody overlooks. And so, what I wanted to do is be intentional about the name of the podcast because it gets people thinking, it gets people asking questions. And that's the whole premise behind our baseball podcast. I host it with another coach who's a phenomenal friend of mine, but it's baseball beyond the box score.
Mm,
And I talk about identity a lot in my personal journey, especially when I work with entrepreneurs. But the wisdom that I would tell people is this: whether you're a sports person or not, it will relate. You have to strive for excellence. You have to work for excellence, but not overcompensate for perfection. It's actually really funny that you bring that question to me because just over the weekend, I went to a Chinese food restaurant and we all got fortune cookies. Well, I opened Kaysen's, my son's, Sunday, and you know what it said? It said, work for success and not perfection." And that was
mm,
him. That was his fortune. That wasn't my fortune. And I was like, what? Like even the Chinese stuff can
yeah,
relate to me, and it's not even mine. I was like, Casey, I'm glad that one's yours, bud. But that's good. That's
yeah.
really good. The wisdom is this: you can be great at something, but don't let yourself be great at something consume everything about you. And
Mm,
that's a tough pill to swallow because it's very targeted for team sports specifically, because we're not only competing for ourselves internally, we're not only seeking after perfection or excellence, right? I think there's a fine line there that we don't have to talk about now, but for team sports in general, you're not just competing against yourself to do the best you can, because you have to not only get the buy-in from your teammates, You also have to get the buy-in from the coaches, because if you don't have the buy-in from your teammates and the coaches, I like to call it the sports trinity,
Mm,
because you're always trying to seek that external validation. Youth sports, like you just said, is fantastic. But whenever we take the mindset of I have to always perform to be liked, to be appreciated, to make the team, to do all of these things externally, that starts putting our identity in external validation. And we've got to remember whose we are and what we're doing and what we're called to do. And that's called to be great. However, don't do that for the sacrificial point of chasing logos and chasing teams.
mm. That's good right there, Addison. That'll preach, man. A couple of other things you mentioned. Shout out to these resources as well. The book Halftime by Bob Buford. Now, I've been in a lot of different men's groups, Addison, and I know we're a little bit, on the younger side, and I often hear the reaction from older men, more mature men in age, that is. We know there's some young folks that are beyond their years, but that's a book that I often hear about people, maybe they're about to hit retirement or they're maybe 5, 10 years away, or they've retired already and they're trying to figure out what's next. Oh, you mentioned the significance for you, like, wow, from even just the phrase from success to significance. Can you talk from your perspective, why that messaging, that same messaging is equally important for a
Mm.
younger person, not just people that are, aging Gen X or aging baby boomers.
Yeah, we don't talk about it in schools, and we certainly are missing the mark whenever we don't talk about that. And I think that there is a huge opportunity in youth sports to start crafting those messages of, hey, you're more than just picking up a glove or sacking the quarterback during a blitz, right? There's more to life than a bat and a glove. But the
Mm,
intentionality of success to significance, especially for those that are teenagers, high school, college, looking for, hey, what is my purpose? Like, what am I here for?
mm,
And obviously, we're coming from a faith driven perspective on this podcast. But the most important thing is everybody has a unique set of gifts. Everybody uses that in a different season of their lives. And the more that we can understand that it's not just this magic bullet of finding your calling, it's a magic bullet of finding what your gifts, talents, and abilities are. And in that season, use them to the best of your ability. And whenever you recognize that, that's when you start unpacking this idea of significance. Like, you're very intentional. And if you're significant in one aspect of what you do, let's be real, you're going to be successful with whatever you put your hand to, because you're utilizing those gifts, you're utilizing those talents, you're pressing into how God created you. And in that process, success is great, right? I
mhm,
think that as business people, the whole premise is to be intentional about reaching people and reaching communities. And the more impactful you are in business, the better off you're going to be with your P&L. And that's honestly more money that you can give away. And
mhm,
so it's like this beautiful cycle that if we start talking about this idea of how can you be significant today? How can you just be intentional today? Start there. Just say,
mm,
hey, how can I be intentional to reach people, to smile at them? That's going to give you success. It might not be in dollars, but it's going to be in heart currency. And that's really the significance that I see, that I'm really leaning toward. And that I had that God moment before I stepped into the doors at Right Now Media. It was like, man, and I had this conversation with myself real quick. I was like, God, I want to be successful. I could go and I could make a bunch of money in sales and do whatever, but I don't want that. Yes, I want to be successful. However, where I am, where I'm standing right now, my thoughts were, God, let's just do it together. Like, let me find a way for my faith and work to come together, and then that's when I can go for that su- success. but really it was significant for me. And that's what I
Mm.
like to talk about.
I love that. Addison, you provide a perfect segue because you talked about right now media. So you've got your athletic background, baseball. You have this awakening. All right, yeah, faith and work. So how do you marry skill set, talents, and kind of the um, purpose assignment aspect? What takeaways did you have from right now media that set you up for faith-driven entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. And there are so many things that I could unpack. But along that journey of right now media, it was very clear. I was an underdog in sports. I worked for everything. I was a pitcher. I was a left-handed pitcher in sports, but I'm not your average pitcher. I'm under 6 feet tall, but I knew how to pitch. I knew how to be effective. And that's what I carried over with Right Now Media. Whenever I stepped into that role, it was all about building relationships for me. And the more that I worked at Right Now Media, whenever I worked at CV Global and now at Faith Driven, I continued to refine what I really enjoyed doing. And that was, I laugh about the term superconnector. That's just what people say. It's like, Addison,
Hmm.
you're gifted to be a connector. And so I've kind of embraced that, not to be boastful, but just to be honest. Hey, God has given me a specific brain where I can just connect dots and Rolodex. And it's like, John, you need to meet Jason. And it's just awesome. So I learned that, but then I also learned how valuable community is. I'll provide a quick story and I'll sum it with this. The opportunity that we have to really embody faith and relationships with God and just this opportunity to love people really came to fruition while I was doing contract work through Glue on the He Gets Us campaign.
Mm.
About 2.5 years. I was on their chat team, I was on their activation team. It was completely anonymous. And the intentionality behind that is seekers would hit an ad and they would chat with us. Not to go into stories, but the bottom line is society is broken.
Yeah.
We are longing for an opportunity to be seen, to be heard, and to be engaged. And that was a moment for me where I was like, as much opportunity as I have to have one on one conversations with entrepreneurs, church leaders, ministry leaders, I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to get to know them. And you know what? If I can sell them, because at that point I was selling Right Now Media, but if I can get them into community, if I can get them thinking about, hey, you don't have to be on this journey alone, that's really where all of these refinement opportunities came for me. I was like, man, how cool would it be to walk into a church, know who your people are, and be like, Jason, I'm struggling.
Mm.
Like that's powerful. And that's what I love doing is helping people connect to build that relationship offline, in person, face to face, and see where the magic happens from there.
Man, that's so good. Community and inside a community, that's where you find relationship and connection. Because it's not just about when everything's going well, it's also about when we have those hardships and struggles. So what an experience to have those takeaways at Right Now Media. And then here comes, and for all the listeners out there, if you know anything about the faith and workspace, you have to be under a rock to not know what faith-driven movements, the umbrella, under that umbrella, faith-driven entrepreneur, faith-driven investor, and so much more. So, Addison, give us a quick overview of everything that faith-driven does, and then talk about your role within faith-driven entrepreneur.
Totally. So we call them heroes. If you go to faithdrivenmovements.org, you'll see the heroes that we focus on. Those pillars are teens. So faith driven entrepreneur for teens, faith driven entrepreneur. That's the lane that I send that I'll unpack briefly. Faith driven investors and then pastors. So those are the
Mm.
really the key elements that we focus on from a movement perspective. The lane that I sit in is with Faith Driven Entrepreneur. So I'm one of our regional directors. Globally, we have about 9 regional directors. We just had one shift off into a more church focused role. So that number, don't quote me on that. But at the end of the day, we want to mobilize entrepreneurs. And we do that through the local church, helping churches equip entrepreneurs, find their community, and fulfill their God given call to create. At the end of the day, there's no burden to the church. It's just an opportunity for us to say, hey, we have resources and ways for you to serve entrepreneurs that are already sitting in your pews or chairs or whatever. And we want to help you mobilize them to get together in community. So that's the role I sit in. I work with entrepreneurs that are facilitating our small groups. We have our core offering is an 8-week foundation series.
Mm,
Typically, that meets once a week, virtually in person, but really catalytic is through the local church.
wow. That's amazing, Addison. The partnership that you talked about. We've got the local church, and then there's so many, and I'd like your comment on this. You mentioned there are people just sitting in the seats and in the pews, and they're being ministered to week in and week out. And you have all these different sectors of influence. You've got, the church, media, healthcare, and then you've got this area of business just sitting right there, and they have their own struggles, their own needs, and to have an organization that says, hey, we want to come alongside you, you as the pastor, you as the congregation, all under the body of Christ, and to help you navigate day to day. So, what kinds of topics are you all finding that entrepreneurs are either struggling with or they want to know more about?
For me, it's really fun because a lot of times our tagline, which is what I just said, helping entrepreneurs find their community and fulfill their God given call to create. And also, entrepreneurship is often a lonely journey, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
That's a reality that gets preached back to me every day that I'm on the phone with entrepreneurs.
Mm,
And what I love is the opportunity to say, you think you're coming for content, which you are. It's a
hmm
video based curriculum. But the most important thing that I realized, and I'll summarize it with this is where the light bulb moments tend to go off, is the first time this has ever happened. I had about 16, I had 12 people on my first call last week, which meets on Thursday mornings. I had 12 entrepreneurs on the call. So my lucky number is 13. So now that I think about this, I laugh because I was the 13th person on that call last Thursday. And the intentionality behind that, I actually sent the email late on Tuesday night. And with travel and everything else, I'll speed this up. So I said, hey, I always do the first session for an hour and a half. Typically, it's an 8-week series, it's an hour. I do the first hour and a half so that we can get through intros. Jason, the coolest moment, I had tears on the first call, not just me, but just the way that the room was open, even at a virtual setting, the way that the room was open. I cast vision for the group. I had an entrepreneur that was sharing his story and he started to get teary eyed. And I'm one of those guys, if you're crying, I'm probably going to shed some tears too, because I just like to be emotional. I don't know. But I had people still on the call an hour and 45 minutes into our first session,
Wow.
still talking. And then it gets better. I had 4 guys. I was the fourth guy. I had 3 other guys that stayed until after 11 o'clock
Wow.
on that Thursday morning, just being intentional. And that's the beauty I love to see is the stories, the impact, the way that churches are also being mobilized, being encouraged to say, I've had business leaders, specifically entrepreneurs, sitting in my church. I want to reach them. I'm not sure how. And then we provide them a way to just bring them together, catalytic of content and community,
hmm
and some beautiful things happen.
Mm. The power of transparency and vulnerability. I'm always amazed when I hear how that's being cultivated in different environments. So that had to be an amazing experience, Addison. Addison, so we've got right now media, we've got baseball, we've got faith-driven entrepreneur, but we're not done yet. We've got redemptive real estate. Before we go, we got redemptive real estate as well as the college, you being a partner in the college baseball recruiting. So talk about those two areas and how God is using you in those spaces.
So one of the biggest taglines that I've had over the past 6 months is cut through the chaos with clarity.
Mm,
And really, that's why I host the baseball podcast, because I want parents and players to know the truth. Been there, done that, right, Jason? You're in the football locker room. I was in the baseball locker room. We get it. There's a lot of facade, there's a lot of lights in action, but the practices, the grit, the grind, that's what not a lot of people talk about. And so that's another thing. But specifically for the other podcast is Follower of One, which really encourages everybody to live on mission.
mm,
Follower of One enables people to go on marketplace mission trips. And so it's just a really cool 2 week sprint that we take people on. But it all goes down to this. And Jason, you were talking about the church sitting in the pews being discipled to. What I love is activation. I love
mm,
mobilization. I love really getting into it and be like, how can we make this practical? Whenever you're sitting in a church on Sunday, it's all about me. It's all
mhm,
about how I think about all the things that I did wrong last week. And it's like, man, I want to be like Paul, who was Saul persecuting Christians, and then now Paul is on fire for Jesus. There's a reason why he said pray without ceasing. Let's just be real. Like we have to in today's time. But fast forward to the podcast and redemptive real estate. It sounds like I do a lot, but listen, I have fun doing it. So for me, it's not a burden. It's actually just so fun for all the
mhm,
things that I have my hands in. Redemptive real estate is a cool story. Speeding through that, I met Ryan Paler, the founder of Redemptive Real Estate, through Faith Driven Entrepreneur and Investor probably over a year ago. Fast forward, we got reconnected. I worked with him on his national summit that just happened in mid March in Dallas. Through those conversations with Ryan, he and I really started talking about what's on my heart for redemptive real estate. And it's funny, whenever I was in the master's program, I focused my thesis on restorative justice, this
mm,
idea of restoration and restorative justice. And that idea of restoration has just continued through. It's like the through line of everything that I've put my hands to in the nonprofit space. It's
mm.
restoring faith in the marketplace. It's restoring clarity through baseball. It's restoring families, etc. And so a big heart of mine is redemptive real estate is restoration. So whenever you talk about restoration, what does that mean? It's redemptive land at the end of the day. It's how can we utilize land? How can we utilize retreat centers, retreat organizations, people that are serving people in whatever capacity, business leaders, executive retreats, executive offsites, ministry leaders that are nearing burnout. How can we bring all of these organizations together and collaborate effectively and move the needle for the kingdom? So that's really what I'm passionate about. That's also another thing that I'm looking forward to later this year is spinning up a specific redemptive land roundtable.
Mm.
And that's going to move us into how do we really intentionally go do those things and be intentional about working together for the kingdom through the lens of redemptive real estate.
I love it, Addison. You're getting me fired up, man.
Come on, Jason. Come on.
That's one of the things. Is there anything else coming up in the back half of 2026, Addison, that just gets you absolutely fired up? I mean, you and I both remember, running out the tunnel or running out the dugout for yourself. Is there anything else that people can look forward to from you, whether that's with faith-driven entrepreneur or just some of the other endeavors that you're involved in?
I'm having fun, Jason. I'm looking forward to a lot of things, more podcast episodes. If you're a podcast listener, encourage you to check out the podcast that I host and let's be friends. I'm always, if there's one thing that I look forward to, Jason, it's helping people not be alone.
Mm,
It's helping people find their community and really plugging into what their thoughts are how can they be intentional? What's their significance? We mentioned faith-driven movements. One thing that I really like talking about is solving the world's greatest problems. It's another initiative of faith-driven movements, but we get to ask people what their problem is.
Mm,
And if we look back in late 2025 to early 2026, and then looking ahead to 2026, I've really have found what my problem is. There's a 3 minute gut check on swgpsolving.org. You can do a 3 minute gut check. It pits the 30 plus greatest problems of the world together, and you ultimately dwindle it down like an NCAA March Madness bracket, and you ultimately end up with your problem. My
mm,
problem, whenever I did it, was selfishness.
mm.
And I think that that's something that we can unpack on a different episode, but just the intentionality of understanding where your heart is, this through line of restoration, this through line of refinement. That was actually the National Summit theme.
Wow.
And Malachi 3:3 was the anchor verse of that. And that's what I'm looking forward to in 2026 is just this opportunity for me to continue be present with the Lord, refine the journey, refine the outcome of what I'm doing, and have fun doing it.
Mm. My goodness. You get me excited, Addison, man. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. Let me not start preaching, but folks,
Come
definitely
on.
take a look at Malachi 3 through when you get a chance. Well, folks, as you can tell, Addison and I can have our own miniature conference just between the two of us, but we do have to let him go. He's got to continue solving the world's problems as God has carved out for him. Addison, you've given us nuggets of wisdom. You've shared powerful stories. Where can people go to connect with you, keep up with what you're doing? Because right now you've got them excited. You've given insight, and the last thing they're asking, how do I get in touch with the guy?
Absolutely. The most easiest way is connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mm,
And I also have a Substack that I just really pour out intentional thoughts of where I am on the journey, what I'm doing, and ask questions. I think the most important thing is just asking questions, and maybe one person read it. Maybe I'm the only person that reads my Substack, but the most important thing is getting the word out there and being excited about it. But yes, LinkedIn, that's a great way to get in touch with me. Tell me that you connected through the Fortified Life podcast, and I would love to have a virtual coffee with anybody that would want to.
Love it, folks. You heard it from Addison himself. There have been so many mentions. Shout out to follower one and Mike Henry, by the way. That's another God wink that we were talking about offline. But everything that Addison is involved in, you can find in the show notes, fortifiedlifepodcast.com. Addison, I cannot thank you enough for hanging out with us on the show. We absolutely will do this again, my friend.
Absolutely, Jason. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir. Well, folks, that's all we have time for here on the Fortified Life. You know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Show notes will be available on fortifiedlifepodcast.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Fortified Life and also search The Fortified Life and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, Apple, Spotify, iHeart Media, iHeartRadio, wherever you search us, you'll be able to find us. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.